the media reflects the interests of the proprietors to a great extent. Even when there is no overt interference, journalists tend to behave as if they have been instructed, so that you get you find that most journalists tend to be on the side of the authorities in any given situation. People who are demonstrating in the streets, for instance, are not treated with respect. They're treated as a sort of sideshow. They're not looked at as serious people. And what they have to say is never really seriously investigated. It is just an incident that happens and that's it. And then what happens after that is that the media goes and here's what the officials say, or the ministers or the civil servants, and that's the end of the story. But you don't get them going out and investigating what is it that the people are complaining about. Basically, that is the problem. In the economic field, the agenda is written by the government and the bankers and the people with money. So that you haven't heard, apart from myself and perhaps one or two other people who have written about globalization. There's nothing about globalization, has been nothing for the last 10 years in the press, so that nobody knows. Most people have not the slightest idea what globalization means. So when the Prime Minister talks about embracing globalization, nobody knows what he's talking about. It is just another slogan. And people don't know what is at risk, what they have at risk. They don't know what the country is risking by globalization. The labor force is thoroughly cowed, and people are afraid of demonstrating against anything. Democracy is in a state of suspended animation, a bit like it is in the United States. And I think it has a lot to do with the models that we've imported from that part of the world. The whole neoliberal casino capitalism model, which has been sold to us by the IMF and the World Bank. As far as they're concerned, to me, they are the moral equivalent of the Black Death for places like Jamaica. Because when you look at the results of their programs and policies, what they do is to make people hungrier, driving farmers off the land, making people more violent by driving people into the towns, taking away the educational rights of children, which means that children grow up illiterate, without any choices, without the possibility of making real choices or having real choices. And the one choice is to fire a gun. So you have people who might have IQs of 200 or nearly 200, who are out there busy firing guns because they don't have an education. And the society treats them as throws them out. They're outcasts, disinherited. I mean, I remember, writing about the Rastas being beaten up after the Coral Gardens thing in 1964. And I reread it, And one of the people I wrote about was a friend of mine, a guy called Brother Cole, John Cole. And he was taken out of his house in Waitabit in Trelawney, simply because he had a beard. Nobody had any evidence that he knew anything about what had happened in Montego Bay, which is 40 miles away. Brother Cole is a man known to be peaceful. He was a sculptor. He used to carve alabaster. But they came for him anyway. And they took him away and they beat him until blood came out of his penis. And they beat him until they nearly killed him. And it was pure chance, apparently, that saved him from dying. And he had nothing to do with what was going on in Montego Bay. And that is 40 years ago. When the Prime Minister at the time said he was going to shoot from top to bottom, he was going to clear out all of this. And even, Mr. Wills Isaacs of the PNP, a couple of years before that, and he had got into a commotion at JBC because he wanted to put out a speech in which he was telling people to round up Rastas, round up every beard man. catch them and tie them up and carry them to the police. In those days, they probably would have caught them and tied them up and carried them. These days, they just catch them and kill them. But this is a PNP and the JLP saying the same thing, both of them. Again, nearly 40 years ago, Morris Scargill stopped writing for the Gleaner for a time because when I got fired from JBC, he wrote in my defense saying that I had the right to say what I was saying and the government had no right to fire me. And the Gleaner promptly said that he was not going to publish that column. And Cargill said, well, you're not publishing that column and I'm not writing for you. And he didn't write for them for about 5 years or 6 years. I can't remember how long it was. And but it hasn't changed anything. Well, you look around, you see people being given presents, people being offered trips to here and there, people being given free tickets. And most journalists, I mean, the whole idea of journalistic ethics is so far away from most people that they don't realize that they're compromising their integrity and their independence by accepting these things. I think if some of them, think about it, they know, well, we're not too sure about this. But the point is that for most people, they sort of uncritically, they sort of accept it. This is my due for being a journalist. It never occurs to me, and has never occurred to me that I was owed anything by some private benefactor for being a journalist. I was doing my job for which I was being paid. And I knew all the time that I only work for one boss. Basically, that boss is me, even if I'm working for somebody else, right? But the fact is, most people do not see it that way. And they don't see it that way partly because they weren't trained that way. I happen to be trained by people like Hector Bernard and Vic Reed, right? And they were perfectly clear about how this thing worked. And you don't accept presents and gifts and favors from people. And these days, journalists are busy accepting presents and gifts and favors. I mean, some people said there's some even accepting girlfriends. I tell you. Hey, my brother. People say, why do you criticize the United States? What they're doing in Guantanamo is against the Constitution and laws of the United States. It is against international law. It is against every convention that the United States has signed, Geneva Convention, Hague Conventions. It is against the law to torture people. It is against the law to arrest people without giving them a chance to be defended by law. It is against the law to arrest people without telling their relatives where they are. It's against the law to torture people. People are being tortured either by the Americans or by their allies in Turkey or in Egypt or in Pakistan or in Dubai or wherever. Right? That's against the law. It is a heinous crime. It is the lowest of the low. And if you don't speak out against it, you are guilty of it too. You have no business being on that side of evil. And that's how I feel about it. I don't have any choice. It's not a question that I have a choice. If I know about it, I have to do something about it. That's what being a journalist is supposed to mean.
On a personal level, being, a fearless journalist that you are.
I don't know if I'm fearless. I don't know about that at all.
You're being modest now, all right.
No. You get scared too,
I was just going to ask you, what kind of repercussions have there been for you? I mean, on a personal level, with people that you know or in the class, in the upper classes, people that
Well, I've been used to people. When I was doing the public eye and agitating for the national minimum wage. There were people, twice it happened to me, driving past in cars who spat at me. So, it is par for the course. You figure if you make your bed, you lie in it. There's no point in trying to complain about it because you choose it, right? So you just go on with it, get on with it. It's as simple as that. Because you are afraid, of course you're afraid. I cannot get up the nerve to apply for a visa to go to the United States, because I'm not sure that I'm going to come back alive. I'm not sure that I won't, first of all, be arrested for whatever reason. But I mean, I see people, a couple of weeks ago, French journalists who don't have any record of ever writing anything against America, as far as I know, were arrested, strip searched, thrown into a little cell and left overnight because they dare to want to go into the United States to write about terrorism, right? If that can happen to them and they're French, what's going to happen to me? And there are all sorts of crazes over there. And there are people who write me, people who attack my computer, right? I know, that people don't like me. I get hate mail from Israel and from England and places, because I've written up what I've written about the Palestinian struggle, because of what I've written about terrorism and George Bush, right? And my computer is bugged, I know that. As long as don't interfere with what I'm doing, in a real sense, that's cool. They can read whatever the hell it is that I have on my computer. But, what are you going to do? You're going to live afraid of what? What are you going to do? Just lie down and cringe? I am too old for that. I never was young enough for it. You see, there is no organized struggle of the poor apart from survival. And what has happened is that the whole corporate and government propaganda has been to demoralize people, to make them feel that they're not worth anything, and to make them feel that they can't do anything. So until you get rid of that feeling in the majority of people, nothing is going to happen. But you see, when you start, as structural adjustment does, by destroying the educational system, that is where the morale system goes as well. Because if people don't know, they can't do anything about it. And so, if people figure that they're just, if they get the narrative from the US, you're just a bunch of niggers, near the well, do nothing niggers. After a while they come to believe it, people do.
There have been some ugly incidents recently in terms of development taking place and the destruction of the environment.
Right.
But there seems to be a tension between development and preserving the environment.
There's no tension.
Can there be a balance between the two?
Of course.
And if there is not a balance, which should win out? Is it development or is it environment?
Sustainable development needs to be known. It's not the environment. Environment is not something that's separate from you. This is our environment at this moment, right? And we need to have it clean, sanitary. The air needs to be pure. We need to have water available. We need to be able to go to the bathroom without making a mess of the countryside. All of that is part of the environment.
But we need hotels and we need highways.
We can have
we
hotels
need
and
factories.
we can have highways, but we don't have to have these monsters, right? We have hotels which don't do the kind of damage to the landscape that these Spanish monstrosities are doing. These are cascades of concrete that go into the sea. They are changing the way the beaches are going. By the way, you talk about what the damage what about the environment. Yalas, the Johnson River, Plantain Garden River, the Dry River and Hope River and Cane River, all used to send their sand along the coast, and it used to end up on the coral reefs that formed the islets around Kingston Harbor, and that eventually formed the Palisados. Greed
But John,
has allowed us to dig down the sand and take away the sand before it gets into the sea. Now you talk about you're going to lose Palisados. Palisados, we are talking about an investment of several $100 million US. And what if we're going to lose that because people are too greedy to stop the mining of sand in Yalas?
But John, the people who are responsible for development are saying we have to create jobs, or else if we don't create jobs, we're going to have crime.
Yeah, but if you're going to create jobs by sand mining and lose Palisados, lose the airport, is that make any sense to you?
So how do we strike a balance then? I mean,
Sustainable development. Find
and
out
what is
what
sustainable
works.
development?
What works without stealing from our children? What works so that our children can enjoy at least as much and as good as we have enjoyed, and in fact it should be better. So what we need to do is to protect the national patrimony, protect the national interest by protecting the mountains and the rivers, because if you don't do that, you're not going to get any fish. We soon won't have any fish in Jamaica because the development-minded people say, go on man, fish anything you do, take out everything. You don't have no more
But John,
fish.
you see how the process works. A developer comes in and he applies for a permit.
I know, but this
But
developer...
you and I don't have anything to say about...
Because the NEPA doesn't put it out and tell people about it. The law says that they should, but they don't do it. And we need to hold them feet to the fire, and we're going to start doing that. Right? Because we, as members of the public, have a right to determine who is going to throw garbage next door to us, who is going to undermine our land, right? Who's going to stink up our ear. We have a right to say. We have a right. It's a human right. The right to freedom of the press and the right to a clean environment are both part of the same thing. It's the essence of survival. That is the wicked thing about it.
No, you have done a lot of reading on environment, the science of preserving the environment. Is it possible to reverse this environmental degradation?
Some of it
is possible to reclaim the sea, the rivers?
It is. If we had started and reclaimed Kingston Harbour as we had planned in 1978, we could swim in it now and we would be catching fish in it now. And it wouldn't cost us 20 times as much American dollars. It would have cost us $2 million to do that in 1978. It cost $2 million.
Can we do catch up now? Is it possible to catch up?
It cost $2 million to plan for it now.
So we can do the catch up?
Of course we can do it, but we have to decide where we're going to spend the money. And if we don't spend the money, if we are spending money on these horrendous roads, to the exclusion of everything else, we're not going to spend it on food, growing food. We're not going to spend it on children. We're not going to spend it on clearing the slums. And that is where the crime is. That's where the wickedness is. People don't kill because they are wicked. They kill out of desperation. Read the World Bank reports. You give the people some education, them stop shooting people. You give the people better neighborhoods, them stop killing people, them stop fighting with one another, them stop beating up the woman. They look after their children. That is what the environment is about. It is to get people to live decent lives. That's what we're talking about. And there's nothing more political than the environment. If you want to talk about justice, we have to talk about the environment. Because it is that causes the things that burn us to our soul in this country.
It must be a very exciting time for you at teaching at Karamak. I mean, how do you combine all of these things together and have young minds to try and shape? I mean, what's the challenge there like?
I don't know. One of my students the other day was introduced me to somebody that said that is our rebel tutor. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm having fun, doing what I like best, which is telling the truth. One of the nice things about telling the truth is you don't have to remember what you said. Mm-hmm. If you tell a lie, you have to remember everything that you said. I can tell you what happened 50 years ago, and it is the same as I told you 25 years ago.
John, you must be extremely disciplined in your work, because I think you have told me before that you take one day to write your articles. How do you do it?
No, I don't think it depends. Sometimes I can sit down at the computer and the article comes out in 2 or 3 hours. But it is being written in my head for the whole week. Right? You can't write an article in just by sitting in front of the computer. Your life is in there.
Yes.
Right? And that is your life that has gone past. And your daily life, and what you read, and what you talk about, who you talk to, the people you meet, the stories you read in the newspaper, like this foolishness in the Star the other day. All of this is part of what goes into that. And your mind is processing it all the time. It's like a compost heap.
No, John, we're coming to the end of the program, and I just want to ask you, you've lived a very fruitful, a very colorful life. How do you think you would like to be remembered, 20 years, 30 years from now, when people are assessing John Maxwell?
I don't know. I suppose you could say I don't believe in giving up. I don't give up.
Yes. Keep on fighting. Keep on fighting. Well, John, it was a pleasure having you as my guest on 360 Degrees, and all the best.
Thank you, my brother.
Keep on fighting.
Thank you.